Yes, you do. Yes, I do. I have to be carefully taught. This week, I don't often talk about this stuff in church, but we're up to Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis. And the confusion of the Bible and what we've been taught about various lessons in the Bible. Funny, now I've been planning this for a couple of weeks. And I rarely am the subject or the object of discrimination, in public. That's never been my issue, growing up. The worst I got was Shawn the Leprechaun. But David and I were at the theater the other night, and there was a woman behind us who was singing along and having a chat and pulled her water bottle out of her plastic bag through the whole second act. And finally, near the end of the second act, I turned around and said, "Will you shush?" And then the show ended, and I saw a path through, and I ran up the aisle, thinking David would be with me, but David loitered a little bit, and the woman turned to him. There were three women together, and said, "Maybe you'd like George Michael more down the street." And it's like, what? And he said, "What do you mean by that?" And she said, "Well, I just think what do you mean? What is it you're saying?" She said, "Well, nothing. And the woman next to her said, "Well, you have to be kind to her because she has cancer, stage 4. And David said, "Well, maybe, but that doesn't give her an excuse to be a bitch or to make noise in the theater." And we left. But it shook me up because I'm so not used to that. I grew up, my grandfather was Archie Bunker. But the rest of my family wasn't. And so it throws me, and like I said, I have experienced very little discrimination personally. I have lots of friends who have. And I haven't, and I've, in all my years on the pulpit, I've never talked about being gay, and I still don't, because I figure heterosexual ministers don't talk about being heterosexual. So to me, I don't bring politics onto my pulpit. But it's about some of the confused teachings in the Bible, the misinterpretations in the Bible that have left a lot of people with a lot of self-loathing because of what they heard as a child that was bad based on the Bible. Well, the Bible says this, and so you're bad. Well, the Bible doesn't necessarily say this. It has been misinterpreted, and I think we need some clarity here so that we don't have to. Any loitering self-loathing can be just brushed away. Just brushed away. I didn't know. I remember early on in my sobriety, I was elected by surprise to chair an all-gay meeting. And it's when I went in to do that I discovered my own homophobia. I did not know I was a homophobe until I was in a room full of gays who were sober. So we had nothing to numb ourselves with. I had nothing to numb myself with. So I had to look at, oh my gosh, I don't like gay people. I must not like myself, and I didn't know it. I'm embarrassed. And I saw my mother just hating the gays and using the Bible as a thing. Now, my mother loved me as much as she could. I know that, but she was embarrassed that I was gay. There was always maybe now you'll meet the right woman. Now maybe. Until the end. I gotta tell you, the last relationship I had before David, and this is, well, obviously she was still alive, I called her up to say, Carter and I are going to break up. And she said, well, doggone it. Just when you find somebody you can trust, it still doesn't work out. Big gift she gave me that day. Wonderful gift. It's at that point, through 3 divorces of her own, and both my brothers have been divorced, that, I think you can discern that heterosexuality is not a guarantee of joy. And so, to look at these things differently. Now, if you look at Genesis 18, says that two angels and the Lord came to visit Abraham. And metaphysically, angels mean divine ideas. And Lord means law. So two angels came, and Abraham invited them in and entertained them, and then they left, and they went over to Sodom, where Abraham's nephew Lot was living, in the rich valley, as I talked about last week, because Lot claimed the rich valley, and left Abraham with the hill town, which means you can see. Hill metaphysically represents seeing. And but down there in Sodom and Gomorrah, these two towns that were known for their limitations, for their rigidity, for their hatred of strangers, for their hatred of what was different. And new people coming into town means different. And so the angels go over to Lot's house, and Lot invites them in to stay. First they're going to go sleep in town, and he says, no, you'll stay with me. And then what happens is the men from town come banging on the door. Send the angels out, or now they've gone from being angels to men. Send the men out that we may know them. Because they're strangers. What's the big deal? And Lot, being the ever gracious host, says, no, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Tell you what, I'll send my daughters out instead. And that shows you the value of women. A man cannot let his guests be raped, but he can let his daughters. Now, that story has been denounced for as long as I know, claimed for as long as I know, to be about homosexuality. And that's why God says it's wrong. But that isn't about homosexuality. Clearly, these men were not even homosexuals who came. They would objectify any stranger, but the daughters were fine. This is about rape. The story is about rape. I was taught this was about homosexuality, but it is about rape. And in case you don't know, rape is wrong. Rape is wrong. Now, it's not just physical rape. It's emotional rape. It's financial rape. It's manipulation. It's all about sense consciousness. And the Fillmores in Unity taught a lot about sense consciousness. And how if the senses are more important than the spirit, that's how the mind begins to waste away, and then the body begins to waste away. Because if I'm continuously trying to satisfy the senses, the sense consciousness, I'm never going to be satisfied. Those of you in this room, and I know there were a few of you, who have tried to satisfy the spirit by way of the senses, and you've yet to be satisfied, no matter how hard you try, and it robs you. It robs you of satisfaction. It robs me of satisfaction when I try to do it. When I try to satisfy what I know to be love, what I know to be joy, what I know to be peace, and I try to satisfy that with sex, with money, with gluttony, with rage, with my opinions that are so right, when I try to satisfy what I know is this infinite spirit, this invisible presence within me, and I'm trying to use the other stuff to spiritualize what I know doesn't work for me. When I try to spiritualize it in some way, it never works, even though there is the impression that it will work. There have been religion upon religion upon religion that has used God to hate and to kill, to rob people of their dignity and their spirit. Politics is a form of trying to spiritualize our thinking to make us afraid. My parents fears. They will use their fears and spiritualize them to bring their children into the fray of fear. If you go through your wall of Facebook, I'm willing to bet you will see at least 50% of people trying to scare us. Not us, their friends. Trying to scare their friends with what is bad about America, about religion, about God, about other people, about how stupid people are, about what idiots people are. Look at your wall, and hopefully you're not the one posting it. Maybe you're the 50%. I don't know. I try not to go through everybody here's wall and judge them. But I do know what I see, and there's some fun stuff on Facebook, and I laugh at some of that stuff. And it's funny, a lot of religion, if you read your Bible, you'll see a lot of it was to civilize people, an uncivilized culture, and to look at it and to somehow scare them into being civilized. And that's what we read in a lot of this. You know, the Ten Commandments are to align an uncivilized culture. Leviticus, all those abominations, is to align an uncivilized culture. I understand the idea is good, but the manifestation, the demonstration is not, because it's still to make you better in the world rather than in spirit. When you, those of you who are parents, are you seeking to make your children better in spirit or better in the world? You know, I grew up with wonderful manners. I knew exactly what fork to use, what knife to use. I knew when I was a guest in someone's home, I always made the bed. I did everything so that no one would ever talk about me, that I had bad manners. That way, they did not teach me about a delightful personality and being a charming guest. You know, I was not taught that sort of thing. And so I have always rebelled at when people are, I call lying, when it really are, but it could be just disillusioned truth. You know, when I was guided to do this or this, and I said, no, that can't be the truth. That can't be the way to go. You know, or it's okay to lie for me, but not to me mentality. And so to look at that and say, what were you taught? And here's the tricky part. How can you look at where you were taught inappropriately, but not hate the teacher? That's where we're going to grow in spirit. That we don't have to hate our parents. We don't have to hate those teachers in school. We don't have to hate the nuns and the priests and the whoever your preacher was, your minister was, your grandmother, your stupid Adam and Eve. You know, we don't have to hate these people, these teachers who taught us from a fear-based mind. But neither do we have to continue teaching from a fear-based mind. In the snowstorm a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if you noticed on Facebook, and it's not that old Shawn is so clever, but I'm grateful it came through me to say, we're open, drive joyfully, rather than drive carefully, rather than drive safely. I saw so much of that, and I thought, those of you who want to drive joyfully. It doesn't say drive crazily. It says drive joyfully. Because why put that extra element of fear into the journey? And I was so pleased that I could think of that. That I used to be a part of a church that when they got their new space, everywhere you looked was no. There was a sign, this cabinet is for this person only, and this cabinet is off. Do not use this cabinet. Do not this. Do not fill up your water bottle from this thing. Do not. Everywhere you went in a unity church was the word no. And I thought, man, but I know that minister taught me about the God's response is yes. God says yes more than no. And so you've got to be taught somewhere. You've got to be taught. And so we look at the angels who came. And I love that when Lot went out to greet the people, and they said, let those men out. And the angels, what they did was they brought Lot back inside. They brought Lot back inside and closed the door against the men. So the daughters didn't have to go out. The men didn't go out. They closed the doors. And then, those of you who, well, familiar or not familiar with the story, the Lord speaks to Abraham and says, I'm going to destroy these two cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. The wickedness, what it really is, the confused thinking there is so great, it has to be wiped out. It just has to be. And Abraham says, well, if I can find 50 righteous people, will you save them? Okay, sure. If I could find 45 righteous, if I could find 35, if I could find 10, couldn't even do that. Finally, he found his nephew Lot, Lot's wife, and their two children. And Abraham and Sarah, the age. So Lot and his wife and kids are leaving. And they get to the top of the hill. And they were told, do not look back. And Lot's wife looks back. Metaphysically, that means she's still pulled to the old sense consciousness. And it says she turned into a pillar of salt. When they did that, and salt just, it turns into the ground, and but what it means is that she still that longed for that old way. It's like, how many of you, and I invite you to look within and say, how am I trying to turn the old way and make it seem spiritual? I want to keep my limitations, but I want them to sound and feel spiritual. I want to keep my fears, but I want to make them sound godlike. Like I should be afraid. I should be sick. I should be this. I should be this. What happened to me. Well, if it's supposed to be. It's one of my favorites. I guess it was supposed to be. No, it's not that it's supposed to be. As if who preordained that it's supposed to be this? What it is it's the only way it can be with the thoughts I am holding. Now, I'm not bad for that. God is not judging me for that. It's just metaphysics. It's just metaphysics that my life is playing out the way I'm defining it, the way I'm telling myself it is. And if I'm getting on the phone with you and saying, you should be different so I can be happy. And you should be different so I can be happy. And I sure wish you wouldn't have done that, because now I can't be happy. And you, and you, and you, and you, and then I get on the plane. I got to get a seance to get to my mother to say, if you'd have been different, I'd be happy. And the politicians, if they were just different, because I see me as this helpless little thing. What am I going to do? What am I supposed to do? It's one thought at a time, everybody. It's one thought at a time to shift. One thought gathers another thought, gathers another thought. We can do it very gently. We can shift very kindly. We don't have to maintain the message of limitation that we've been taught anywhere along the line. We just don't have to. It is not out of disrespect for those we love that we don't hold on to their limited thinking. I'm not honoring my parents, my grandparents, my uncle, my aunt by honoring their limited thoughts. And to let go of them isn't a form of hatred, although it was Jesus that said, hate your mother and your father and come with me. Now, it doesn't mean kick them in the shins. What it means is detach from their thinking and allow the aha to flow through you. Instantaneous healing is possible. Instantaneous peace is possible. Instantaneous love is possible. Instantaneous joy is possible. That's one of the options as well. but take as long as you like, because there is no time in God. Just know that while you're taking your time, you're missing out on joy. You're missing out on peace. You're missing out on love. Let me read you something. I like that. My friend Greg Nettler, who wrote a book on the Old Testament, a wonderful metaphysical explanation that's out of print. But the last part he wrote on this subject, he says, to remember is not the problem. To want to return is the problem. And that's where some of us go. We will find this new thought message, and we will embrace it because we realize, oh my gosh, it's setting me free. It is completely setting me free, and I don't have to worry about losing. I can manifest. And you do. You manifest. Health begins to flow more vibrantly. Your skin changes. Your conversations, the people in your lives shift, and it's wonderful. And you found your like-minded people, and it's wonderful. And then something little happens, and we return to fear. We return to fear, thinking I'd be afraid of losing this good thing. I hope I never lose you. This is so well. And retreats are like that. The last day of retreat. Oh no, I have to go home tonight. I'm going back, and I'm afraid of losing this. This great feeling. And it's like, no, take it with you. That's the point of a retreat, is to recharge, renew, rethink, and then take it into your life. And instead we return to the fear. We return to the belief in limitation. And we wonder why all that recharging, all that we built up, begins to diminish and diminish and diminish and diminish. It's like, quite frankly, you miss church for a few weeks and you're busy working. Yeah, but I got to work on it. And then you come back in and it's not the oomph it was. If you're not picking up your books, if you're not taking a class, if you're not studying, if you don't have your group to discuss your beliefs in God, and how can I take this thing that I don't want to experience anymore? How do I give it up in love as opposed to give it up in hate? So, looked at this in Matthew chapter 7 with the Holy Spirit's interpretation. And it comes, verse 13. And Spirit says, I ask you for your help because leaders are needed among men. For a man who does not know that his heart yearns to be healed is lost indeed, and needs someone to help him see that health is his heart's desire. Let yourself be healed, that your brother may see your health and recognize it is but his own. We're not just talking about health of the body, we're talking about health of the spirit, health of the mind, health of the life and living of it. Let yourself be healed, that your brother or your sister may see your health and recognize it is but his own. Then he will ask for healing and it will be given him. You see, when you heal, I see you and I say, oh, it's possible. Oh, it's possible. My friend Nancy, it's our friend Nancy, so many of us know her, and I have permission to break her anonymity here. Nancy got sober about 5 years before I am. I had come in and went back out. But in those 5 years, she stayed in. And in those 5 years, near the end of the 5th year, she wrote a show. She wrote a one-woman show about Toady Fields and got it produced off Broadway. And I went to it, and it was the hardest thing she's ever done. And in many ways, it was a big mess. She was kind of a mess in it at that point. She's since gone on to do it all over the country and very successfully. But at that point, it was a mess. And they closed it, and they were going to let her go. And I stopped hanging around because she was in such a mood. But I saw that. And I got sober. I thought, if Nancy, who was the most undisciplined person I know, could write a show in sobriety and get it produced and star in it, it doesn't matter the outcome of it. What matters is the process. I thought, well, then maybe, what could I do if I were to put down this drug and seek to live a different type of life? And I did. And a week into it, I called her on Sunday night. And I said, Nancy, I'm back in the room. She said, really? I said, yeah. And you're the reason why. You're my inspiration. She said, I thought you were mad at me because I was struggling so with the show. I said, no, I just thought you didn't want me around, so I stayed away. I said, but I got to tell you. And she had stopped going to meetings at that point. But the next night, we met at a meeting. And for years, we went to meetings together. You see, we had our healing. I used her for mine, and she used me for hers. I am willing to be an example, conscious or unconscious, of saying yes to life, of saying yes to what I know to be true, instead of fighting against what I know to be false. Would you give up the teaching that you have to fight against what you don't like and take on the thought, I accept what I know to be true. I accept it in my mind. I accept it in my vision. I accept it in my word. And I accept it in my action. Would you be willing to even consider, I'm willing to accept what I know to be true, and I don't have to fight against what isn't? Teach yourself that.